Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I'm sitting in the dimly lit living room, a half-burned cigarette trembling between my fingers as I watch the faint reflection of myself in the glass window. The night sky beyond is a silent black, broken only by a solitary street lamp at the curb. My breath is steady. My pulse? Calm. There's a strange clarity surging through my veins, like I'm performing surgery with a scalpel, separating tissue, excising rot. No shaking, no outburst of rage. Just a man, fully aware of what he's doing. And why. Step 1 of my plan. Identify the infection. That's what all this is about. 3 precise strokes to kill trust, to make sure there's nothing left for them to cling to. After all, trust died the night I overheard my wife whispering another man's name. I could have lost my mind right then. I could have roared my betrayal into the darkness. But I didn't, because I'm a man, and I hold on. Because I prefer to operate like a surgeon, not a butcher. I remember that first moment of revelation. It was after midnight. I'd come home late from a trip, wasn't expected back until the following day. But something in me wanted to surprise her. Sarah, my wife of nearly 20 years. I had our old house key, of course, and I slipped in through the side door with the clumsiness of a man who thinks his biggest challenge is removing his shoes quietly, worried he might wake his sleeping family. Except the lights were still on in the bedroom. Her voice was low, nearly silent, but I caught the tone. That hush of excitement you only hear in the throes of intimate confession. I moved carefully, like a thief in my own home, stepping over the threshold and pressing my ear against the crack of the bedroom door. She was on the phone. I could feel her tension, sense the trembling breath that isn't meant for me. And I heard the name. Mike. She said it as if she were tasting something sweet, something forbidden. I heard the smallest hitch of breath, a soft moan that spoke volumes. She was half laughing, half murmuring, and I caught the distinct rustle of sheets. That was all I needed. I didn't break into that room, fists clenched, demanding answers. I could have. I had every right, from a moral standpoint, to tear through the door and shout, "What the hell is going on?" But that's not me. So I did the unthinkable. I took a breath, let the wave of hot jealousy wash over me, and stepped back. I waited in the hallway, invisible. I listened until she said her little goodbyes. Too many ellipses in her voice, as if she never wanted to hang up. Then I heard the phone click and the bed creak. Silence settled. Only then did I set my shoes down softly, took off my jacket, and made enough noise to sound like I had just arrived. I tapped on the door, made a show of fumbling with the handle, like I was unsuspecting. Inside, she hurriedly pretended to be asleep. Her phone was half hidden under a pillow. A corner of the bedsheet was bunched around her waist. The sweet tang of perfume in the air felt different than usual. A new brand, no doubt. Or maybe it was his cologne, faintly drifting through the line into her imagination. I couldn't tell, but I recognized how her cheeks still glowed, how she held her breath a fraction too long when I spoke her name. She blinked at me, performing her innocence with trembling eyelashes. "You're back early," she whispered. "Couldn't wait, I guess." I nodded, my expression mild. "I missed you," I said, lying. Or maybe it wasn't a lie at the time. We've been married nearly 2 decades, so perhaps there was a shred of genuine longing in me. But mostly, I was studying her, observing, making internal notes. That's the moment a man chooses whether to look away or open his eyes fully. I chose to see everything and remain silent, because if I confronted her then, I would have lost the advantage. And I'm no longer a man who acts on raw passion. No. Step 1 is to watch, to gather, to confirm. That is the surgery. Identify the diseased tissue before slicing it out. I kissed her cheek, ignoring how she tensed. Then I flicked off the light and pretended to sleep next to her. All night, I heard the phantom hum of her phone vibrating every so often. Once, maybe twice, with muted messages, probably him. Mike. Some fancy name, or maybe just a normal guy. But definitely not me. 2 weeks after that night, she brought home a few small boxes. I asked, casually, "Who are these from?" She tried to keep her voice steady. "Oh, my friend from out of town. She sends me these care packages sometimes." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She shrugged. "Put the bags on the kitchen table." "I guess she's being sweet," she added. But I saw a flicker of nervousness as she placed them on the counter. Each one was carefully wrapped, each with a tiny card tucked under the ribbon. And the handwriting on those cards, definitely a man's. It was all slanting lines, bold strokes. Not the swirling loops I'd expect from her female friend. Instead of pointing it out, I let it simmer. I even forced a smile, pressing my lips together like I believed her. Because that's part of it, letting her lie, letting her spin a story so that, eventually, it tangles around her neck. It's not that I love deceiving her. But I realized that love is a fragile thing. She made her choice, and so I must make mine. The steps have started. Step 2. Apply pressure, watch the cracks deepen. My plan was forming every night I lay awake, hearing her type messages, hearing the flutter in her voice the next morning. She was changing, rotting from the inside with guilt. Meanwhile, I refused to mention my suspicions. I cooked breakfast, ironed her blouses, kissed her forehead. On the surface, the perfect husband. Underneath, a predator waiting for the right moment to pounce. I remember our conversation the day she brought those packages in. She was standing at the sink, rinsing vegetables. The water ran too long, the faucet hissing into the stainless basin. She stared down, her shoulders tense. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Need help?" I asked. She shook her head. "I'm fine." "You seem nervous." Her hand stilled for a fraction of a second. Then she forced a laugh. "Just tired." "Sure," I said softly, stepping closer. "You want a glass of wine later? We could talk." At that, she hesitated, eyes flicking to mine with something like guilt or even fear. "Why would we need to talk?" "No reason," I answered casually. "Thought it might be nice. It's been a while since we had a quiet evening." Her shoulders sank. "Yes, okay. We can try that." When she left the room, she forgot to grab one of the cards from the table, the little note that said, "To S, with warmth." And more. More what? I already knew. She came back seconds later, as if she remembered, snatched it up, and gave me a tight smile, hoping I hadn't read it. But I had. That single word, more, hung in my mind, a testament to how her fidelity was already gone, replaced by someone else's promise. I guess you could say my life had become a careful performance. I did everything as usual. Went to work, handled projects, came home with groceries. But inside my head, the arithmetic of betrayal was always running. So I took my plan to the next stage. Step 2, in detail, meant testing the boundaries, letting her see glimpses of the fact that I might know something, just enough to rattle her nerves. Because when guilt festers, it corrodes. So I let the quiet hints slip in. For instance, one evening I walked into our bedroom, while she was lying on the bed, phone in her hand. She jerked upright. The screen glowed for a second longer. I caught the name Mike just before it disappeared. She stammered something about not feeling well. I cocked my head. "Mike? Who's that?" I asked, the question crisp as a scalpel. "Oh," she said, that's a friend from the center. She works part-time at a family counseling office, ironically enough. He helps us with event planning sometimes." I nodded, expression blank. "Ah, got it." Then I smirked a little, letting my gaze linger on the phone. "I hope he's helpful." She swallowed. I watched her eyes dart away. She was waiting for me to demand more answers, to accuse her outright. But I stepped back, gave her space, as if I trusted her wholeheartedly. That's the cruelest stroke of all, you see, letting her drown in her own unspoken fear. That night, she tried to initiate intimacy, something we'd neglected for months. I saw it in her eyes, guilt pushing her to reassure me physically. Or maybe she needed to convince herself that she still had me. She ran her hand across my chest, leaning in so I could smell her perfume. There was a desperation in the way she whispered my name. The problem was, I also remembered how she'd said Mike with that same breathless hush. So I played along, kissing her deeply enough to taste the tremor in her lips, but something in me was already frigid. My mind replayed the memory of her midnight phone calls, the giggles, the endless ellipses. I pictured her on the bed, phone in hand, wearing that same slip, moaning so softly that only he was meant to hear. It was an odd sensation. I was both intimately aware of her body and emotionally 1,000 miles away. I traced my fingers over the curve of her hip, heard her gasp. Yet all I could think about was the trap I would set for him, because it was no longer about her, not really. It was about ripping out the infection at the source. She bit her lip, pressed herself closer. My heart pounded, not from desire, but from a growing sense of finality. I'd already made my choice. She was just too busy chasing illusions to see it. I told myself, if she confesses, if she breaks down and admits it, maybe I'll let this go. But that never happened. Instead, the lies continued. The next weekend, she returned from running errands with a faint glow in her cheeks. She tried to cover it, but I saw the flush that hours with another man can bring. The smell of cologne on her clothes that isn't mine. The slight bruise at the base of her neck, hidden by her hair. That was the last straw. A wave of cold acceptance settled in my gut. The time had come for step 3. Murder. No, that's too obvious, too bloody. I'm not a criminal in the usual sense, but I do have a friend, Jim. He's done enough shady business deals to know how to manipulate a situation quietly. I'd called him a week ago, half joking, half serious, and said, if I needed someone to vanish without a trace, what would it cost? He laughed. Then he gave me a number. I told him we'd talk soon. That day arrived. I dialed Jim again, the phone cradled against my ear, while Sarah took a shower upstairs. I could hear the water pounding the tiles, masking my voice. Jim picked up on the second ring. You got it? He asked. His tone was neutral, as if I were ordering a piece of machinery. Yes, I said. I want him gone, but not by your hands. Let him bury himself. Jim's low chuckle rumbled through the line. I have an idea. We'll bait him, then set him up. I exhaled, flicking ash from my cigarette onto the driveway. Right. Let's do it. And that was that. The final step. The surgical incision that removes the cancer. Sarah never realized I had discovered her new secret phone. She thought I was too clueless to notice how she carefully checked her messages in private. She didn't expect that I'd read some of them while she was asleep, that I'd taken photos of her chat logs. So I knew the kind of gifts Mike liked. Certain rare brand of whiskey, certain novelty items that teased his sense of humor. That made forging the final package easy. We replicated the style of his usual gifts to her, but reversed the roles. I had Jim's contact create a label that looked like it was from Sarah, like a romantic token from a woman who wanted to keep him intrigued. But inside, we hid something more incriminating. Documents that would point him toward an illegal money scheme, something that would make him think he was about to get a massive payoff if he cooperated. The instructions led him to a remote location on the outskirts of town, an abandoned storage facility. He'd arrive, believing there was a chance to pick up this gift or finalize some big secret plan, courtesy of Sarah. I sent it from SR to Mike's address, including a phone number that rang to one of Jim's burners. The note read something like, I can't talk here. I need you to help me finish this deal. Come alone. Trust me, this is worth every minute of your time. Mike, from what I understood of his personality, wouldn't be able to resist. He was a gambler at heart, always chasing excitement, always wanting the next big thrill. The idea that Sarah was offering him a chunk of money or a shady but lucrative opportunity would pull him in like a moth to the flame. He called the number. Jim answered, imitating Sarah's soft voice. The poor fool bought it. Meanwhile, I made sure to leave subtle hints around Sarah, as if I didn't see anything amiss. I encouraged her to go visit a friend for a weekend, gave her some extra cash to shop. She swallowed that little gift with something like relief, because she thought I was in the dark, still playing the doting husband, still blind to her affair. I parted ways with her that Saturday, hugging her gently, planting a chaste kiss on her temple. She slid into her car and drove off, probably thinking about meeting Mike somewhere in secret later. But she didn't know Mike was already on a different path altogether, chasing the lure I'd planted. That evening, I paced around our living room, phone in hand. I knew Jim was coordinating everything. The plan was simple. Mike arrives at the location, following the false instructions. He finds the forged documents referencing a big payout. He tries to contact Sarah, but the phone is answered by a stranger who spooks him, warns him the cops might be onto him. They argue. The line goes dead. Mike panics. He runs. People in that neighborhood don't ask questions. It's an industrial area, a no-man's land where if you vanish, nobody notices. I didn't need details on how Jim guaranteed that disappearance. Maybe he blackmailed him. Maybe he threatened him. Maybe Mike hopped on a bus to Mexico. Or maybe something darker happened. Jim never tells me the fine points. I'm not sure I want to know. My job was just to stand back, keep quiet, and let the man bury himself, because if he tried to come forward about any of it, he'd have to explain his involvement with my wife, his involvement in an apparent illegal scheme. It's the perfect trap. A man with a questionable background, lured by easy money, no official paper trail. So 2 days later, I learned from a cryptic text that he's gone. No further explanation. I stared at those words for a long moment, feeling a curious emptiness. I didn't cheer or weep. I just felt numb relief. I flicked the ashes from my cigarette into the tray, exhaled, and realized I had done what I set out to do. He was out of my life, and out of hers, whether she knew it or not. When Sarah returned the following day, there was a subtle difference in her eyes. She seemed anxious, probably because Mike wasn't answering her messages. She tried to hide her concern behind a forced smile. "Hi," she said as she entered the living room, rolling a small travel bag behind her. "Miss me?" "Always," I replied quietly, a faint curl at the corner of my lips. I didn't embrace her, just watched as she set her things aside. Then I added, "How was the weekend?" She shrugged. "Oh, fine. Just some girl time." "Sure. That's good." Her gaze flicked around, searching my face for clues. If she suspected I was playing some game, she didn't let on. She walked over and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. I caught the tremor in her lips. We spent the evening in near silence. I saw her check her phone repeatedly, each time with a deepening scowl. She typed messages, stared, typed more. No reply. For once, I almost felt sorry for her. The threads of her betrayal were snapping one by one, leaving her floating in a vacuum of confusion. I said nothing. This was the final step, to let her spiral, to let her own guilt devour her. A silent condemnation is often more punishing than a direct accusation. Days passed, no sign of him. She started losing sleep, pacing the house at odd hours, her robe cinched tight around her waist. I'd catch her staring at the phone, red-eyed from a combination of worry and tears. The man she'd staked her secret hopes on was simply gone, leaving no closure. That's a special kind of torture, not knowing if he's alive, if he decided to abandon her, if he discovered guilt or shame or some new fling. Her imagination would paint 1,000 possibilities, each more painful than the last. One evening, I stood in the kitchen, stirring my coffee, and I heard her behind me, breathing unevenly. She spoke my name in a shaky whisper. I glanced back, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "Yes," I said calmly, lifting my mug to my lips. She swallowed. I need to talk to you." I turned off the stove burner, setting my mug aside. Then I faced her, leaning against the counter. "Talk then." She hesitated. There's something I've been hiding." I tilted my head. "Is that so?" I asked, controlling the slight twitch at the corner of my mouth. Her eyes shone with tears. "I don't know how to say this." I gave a small nod, remaining silent, letting her squirm. "That's how you force confessions from a guilty conscience, by offering no emotional handhold." Eventually she pressed trembling fingers to her lips, exhaling unsteadily. I think I made a mistake. A terrible mistake." I feigned confusion. "What do you mean?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. God, John, I need you to listen. I was seeing someone. And now he's gone. He's not answering, not returning my calls. I think something's happened." I quietly inhaled. Then I nodded, as though I were absorbing the information for the very first time. "So you had an affair," I said, my voice measured. She broke, sobbing softly, arms limp at her sides. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I held up a hand. "Stop." She went silent instantly, her eyes fixed on me. This was the moment she probably expected me to explode, to lash out. Instead, I just stared at her with the calm of a man who has already processed everything. I sighed softly, turned away to take a slow sip of coffee. "That's it?" she asked, voice trembling. "That's all you have to say?" I set the mug down, letting the porcelain clink softly. Then I turned, stepping toward her, letting my gaze bore into hers. "What do you want me to do? Scream? Throw things? Demand to know every detail?" She flinched. "I know, but believe me," I said, voice still eerily calm. "The screaming part is easy. Anyone can do that. But what's the point? You've already broken everything that mattered. There's nothing left to smash." That sentence ripped the air from her lungs. She teetered, face draining of color, as though I'd just stabbed her. The worst blow is always the quiet one. The single line that affirms the finality of your betrayal. She tried to speak, but no words came. She reached out, fingertips brushing my forearm, perhaps searching for a shred of forgiveness or compassion. I stepped back. Her hand fell away. "How long?" I asked, my tone like ice. She stammered. "A few months." I nodded. "You snuck around for months behind my back, and now that he's disappeared, you finally come to me." I paused, letting the silence ring. "Why?" "Because you're worried he might be hurt, or that he's done with you." She bit her lip hard enough to draw a drop of blood. She couldn't complete the sentence, because deep down, she knew the answer was selfish. She wasn't seeking my comfort out of love for me. It was fear and guilt. Fear that the rug got pulled out from under her. Fear that she had nowhere else to turn. I took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. "You're not telling me this to fix our marriage. You're telling me because you're terrified that something happened to him." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, desperation thick in her voice. "Please, John. I don't know what to do." Another beat of silence. Then I answered. "There's nothing to do. Sometimes people just vanish. Maybe he left town. Maybe he's running from something." I shrugged. "Or maybe he's just done with you." The words came out surgically precise. She sobbed. "How can you say that? Don't you care?" I arched a brow. "Care? You stopped caring about me the first time you let him into our bed." I gave a small laugh, cold. "Or maybe it was a hotel room. I don't want the details. Either way, you decided trust didn't matter. So no, I don't particularly care what you're feeling right now. You made your choice. I'm making mine." She shuddered. "What do you mean?" I said, leaning in, voice dropping, "I'm done carrying the weight of your secrets. I'm finished being the fool you can hide behind." I let that hang, then added softly, "In fact, I've known for a long time." Her eyes went wide. You knew. I nodded once. From the first night you whispered his name in our bed. I heard you on the phone, Sarah. Then I let out a mirthless chuckle. You're not a very quiet lover, you know. She trembled, as though the floor might collapse beneath her feet. Why didn't you say something? Because that wouldn't have done anything but expose me to your lies before I was ready. No, I prefer to watch from the shadows. Let you dig your own hole. I took a step back, glancing away. Now the hole is deeper than ever, and he's gone. That's your punishment, Sarah. The not knowing. The fear. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words died on her tongue. She realized the finality in my stance, the chill in my expression. There was no rage for her to push back against, no tearful confrontation she could use to defend or rationalize. Just quiet, calm condemnation. That evening, I slept in the guest room. She tried knocking on the door, her voice hushed with frantic pleas to talk things out. I refused to open. I heard her sobbing softly in the hallway, sliding down against the wall, begging me. But I stayed silent. This was the final stage, the unstoppable rot of guilt devouring her from within, while I observed from a serene vantage point. For days, we coexisted in the same house with minimal conversation. She hovered near me in the mornings, as if hoping for a chance to apologize or beg forgiveness. I kept my responses short, mechanical. I poured coffee for both of us, left hers on the counter, and walked away. She rarely touched food. Her appetite had vanished. She lost weight, her face grew pale, and dark circles framed her eyes. She went through the motions of her job, but each night she came home looking more hollow than the day before. Meanwhile, I found an odd sense of peace. I woke early, took brisk walks around the neighborhood, letting the crisp Colorado air fill my lungs. I embraced the relief of no longer clinging to illusions. It felt good, in a way, to be free of that burden. My heart was numb to her tears. She had hammered it into stone long before she realized the damage was done. One evening, she cornered me in the living room. I had just come in from a smoke, the faint odor of tobacco trailing me as I set my coat on the chair. She stood there, wringing her hands. "John," she said softly, "I need to know if we have any chance. Please." I looked at her, my gaze unwavering. "Chance for what?" "To fix this," she pleaded. "I know I did wrong. I'm begging you to give me a chance to." I cut her off. "To what, exactly?" "Earn my trust back. Pretend you didn't stab me in the heart and twist the knife." Her lips trembled. "I made a mistake. I was lonely. You were always so distant." Stop," I said, my tone frigid. "Don't you dare blame me. You had many chances to come to me, to say we needed counseling, to say you were unhappy. But you didn't. You chose the coward's way out." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. "I can't live like this," she whispered, "not knowing if he's dead or just gone. And you won't even talk to me." I stepped around her, heading toward the window. My reflection showed a tired man with hollow eyes, but also a certain calm detachment. "I have no words of comfort," I said quietly. "His fate is his own. If he ran away, that's on him. If something else happened, that's also on him. And on you." A tremor coursed through her. She turned, pressing her palms into the back of the sofa for support. "John," she asked, voice hollow, "what kind of man have you become?" I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling the stale air. Then I opened them, exhaled, and answered, "The kind of man who has survived your lies. A surgeon who cuts away the gangrene. Nothing more." Days turned into a week. She was a wreck, barely able to sleep. I heard her pacing in the middle of the night. The bed in our bedroom remained untouched, or so it seemed. She drifted from sofa to chair, trying to find peace in any corner of the house. Meanwhile, I found myself sleeping more soundly in the guest room than I had in years. My brand of guilt was different. A cold acceptance. Was I a monster for orchestrating his disappearance? Maybe. But I felt no regret. Maturity taught me that heartbreak is inevitable, and I wouldn't let it devour me. She made a choice, so did I, one afternoon. While she was at work, I discovered a half-finished letter on her desk. It was addressed to our teenage son, who was away at a boarding school. She wrote, "If you ever read this, know that love doesn't die from betrayal alone. It dies from the silence after." That phrase echoed the exact thought I'd repeated to myself so many times. It stung to see it in her handwriting. I folded the note, put it back, didn't mention it. In the meantime, I went on with life. I continued my job, meeting sales targets, shaking hands with clients. Ironically, my performance at work improved. My focus was sharper, my nerves calmer. They used to say a man in emotional crisis can't function, but I found the opposite. My crisis had turned into a methodical control. With the final severing of illusions, I carried no guilt. If anything, I was more productive. She, on the other hand, was unraveling. She came home from the counseling center with her face drawn, eyes dull. Her colleagues likely noticed but kept their distance. Personal chaos is rarely well received in professional spaces, especially from someone who's supposed to help others with their relationships. That, I think, was the final twist of the knife for her, this savage hypocrisy. She was supposed to be a counselor of sorts, yet her own marital life was a shambles, and she'd stepped over moral lines to feed her ego or fill her emptiness. Eventually, she collapsed into me. It was late, close to midnight. I was standing outside on the back patio, leaning against the railing, smoking in silence. She slid the door open, stepped out, arms hugging her sides against the chilly breeze. I glanced at her but said nothing. Her voice was faint. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I'm so tired, John. I'm so tired." I puffed on my cigarette, exhaling a thin cloud of smoke. "And what do you expect from me?" "I need something," she rasped. "Some reason to believe that all this can ever be okay again." I stared at the orange ember at the tip of my cigarette. The reflection of the house lights glowed on her tear-streaked face, illuminating her hollow cheeks, her trembling lips. "You want my forgiveness," I said eventually. "Is that it?" She shuddered, nodding slowly. "I don't know what else to do. I can't bring him back. I can't change what I did, but I can't live with the weight of it anymore." I turned to face her fully, letting the last of the cigarette burn out between my fingers. "You say you can't live with it. But you must, Sarah. You caused it." She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I let her cry for a while. The night was cold. A faint wind rustled the trees beyond the fence. I waited until her sobs turned to broken gasps. Then I reached out and gently touched her shoulder. She looked up, eyes wet, desperate. "Look at me," I said, voice low. She obeyed. "I have no words of comfort. I have no illusions left. You destroyed what we had. But you're still alive. And so am I. We share this house. We share a son. We can't rewrite the past. We can only decide how to exist now." Her shoulders quivered. "Does that mean you want a divorce?" I considered it. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks that would be the honest way out. But another part of me," I paused, exhaling. "Another part of me wants to keep you here, living with your guilt, because that's the only real justice I can see." She winced as if slapped. Then she whispered, "So this is your revenge." I didn't deny it. "Call it whatever you want. I tried to love you faithfully. You broke it. Now you live in the wreckage." She squeezed her eyes shut. "How did we become this?" With a hollow laugh, I answered, "We didn't. You did. When you let him into your bed." I flicked the spent cigarette butt into the darkness. "You became the wedge that split us." I just refused to look away. She sniffled, wiping her tears. "So, what happens now?" I let a silence stretch out. In the gloom, I could make out only the pale lines of her face. My chest felt both tight and liberated. "Now," I said quietly, "I sleep in the guest room. You sleep wherever you please. We keep living, day by day. We act normal in front of our son when he visits. Over time, maybe we figure out what's left of this marriage, if anything. Her lip trembled. That sounds like hell. I shrugged. Maybe it is, but I'm comfortable in it now. And you've earned a place in that hell, whether you like it or not. She pressed her palms to her face. I never wanted to hurt you. Too late, I muttered. Then I turned away, stepping back inside. I left her there, hugging herself in the cold, tears dripping onto the patio floor. Weeks passed, turning into months. Sarah continued to work, but she was subdued like a ghost. She hardly smiled anymore. She tried a few times to call around, searching for any trace of Mike's whereabouts, but she found nothing. She emailed, texted, left voicemails. All vanished into a void. Her heartbreak seemed to deepen with each attempt, a black hole of sorrow from which she could never find relief or closure. As for me, I settled into a routine of quiet existence. I ate dinner alone in the kitchen, often after she'd gone to bed. I spent more hours outdoors, took up small tasks in the garage, refinishing an old chair, tinkering with an outdated lawnmower. Anything to keep my hands busy. Inside, I was at peace in a grim kind of way. The illusions of loyalty and romance had died, replaced by cold clarity. I was just a man who had orchestrated a disappearance. Yet ironically, I felt no guilt. My only regret was that it had come to this at all. Sometimes, in the morning, I'd look at her across the table, hair disheveled, eyes swollen, hands trembling around a mug of coffee. And I almost pitied her, but then I remembered her moans on that phone call, the sweet hush in her voice when she whispered his name, the cheap cologne drifting from her clothes. And the pity turned to apathy. Maybe she'd eventually reassembled herself, become a different person. Maybe not. That was her burden, not mine. Late one night, after I turned out the lights, I found her sitting on the living room couch in complete darkness. The faint street lamp glow touched the edges of her silhouette. She didn't speak as I came closer. I could hear her ragged breathing, the quiet tension in her posture. "You should sleep," I said, leaning on the armrest. She stared ahead, not turning to look at me. "I can't. Whenever I close my eyes, I see him, or I see you, looking at me with such disgust." I said nothing. She continued, voice quivering. Do you hate me?" I sighed. Hate? No. That would require too much energy, too much passion. I'm past that. I'm empty. She squeezed her arms around herself. I wish I could go back and change everything. A small laugh escaped my lips. You can't. None of us can. We just endure. I started to walk away, but she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "John," she whispered, "tell me you feel something. Even if it's just anger." I swallowed, studying her tear-streaked face. "You want me to punish you, is that it?" Her eyes welled again, her breath hitching. "I deserve it. I know I do. And I can't stand this silence, this coldness. I'd rather you scream at me, hit me, anything. At least then I'd know you still have feelings." I gently pulled my wrist free, resisting the swirl of emotions in my chest. "I won't give you that release," I said softly. "This is your cross to bear." With that, I turned and left her in the dark, letting the tension remain. Because she's right. This coldness is far worse than an outburst. Time marched on. Our son visited for a holiday weekend. We put on our practiced smiles, navigated family dinners with forced cheer. He sensed the tension, of course. He's not a fool. But I think he chalked it up to the usual marital strain, maybe financial or something. Sarah did her best to hide her turmoil. I played the role of supportive father, asked him about classes and sports. We even shot hoops in the driveway one afternoon. Occasionally, I caught Sarah watching us with a haunted expression. She must have felt the weight of her secret, the knowledge that she'd single-handedly shattered our world. One evening during his visit, She tried to approach me while I was in the garage looking for a wrench. She stepped in, folding her arms. Her face wore that look, tormented, on the brink of confession, though I suspected she'd never reveal everything to him. "John," she said quietly, "he's going to sense something is wrong." I paused, glancing over my shoulder. "And what am I supposed to do?" She hesitated. "Pretend we're okay." I frowned. "Pretend, Sarah. That's your solution?" Her lips parted, tears threatening again. I don't want him to know what I did. Please, don't make him hate me." My jaw tightened. "He's our son. I'm not going to poison him against you. But I won't lie and say all is well, either." She nodded, shoulders slumping. "I understand." Then I returned to my toolbox, found the wrench, and stepped past her as if she barely existed. In that moment, I realized the full scope of her despair. She wanted me to lash out, to do something. In her mind, that would be simpler than this emotional void where I offered no anchor. But I refused. This was my final vantage, my victory over the heartbreak she inflicted. She wanted the comfort of a standard meltdown, something to fix or nurse. Instead, she got an unbreakable silence. After our son returned to school, the house felt emptier than ever. Sarah spent her nights either in tears or in a zombie-like daze. I kept my routine, now fully entrenched in my near-clinical calm. Once in a while, I'd question myself. Am I the villain, or am I just a man protecting what's left of his dignity? Either way, the outcome is the same. One particular evening, she tried to talk in the living room again. I was reading a newspaper, half distracted. "John," she said, "I can't keep living under this roof if you look at me like a stranger. I need a decision. Are we going to separate? Divorce? Or is there a chance to rebuild?" I folded the newspaper carefully, set it aside. "Do you think we can rebuild?" I asked softly. She swallowed. "I'd do anything to try. If it means counseling, if it means changing jobs, if it means never leaving your side, I'll do it." I stared at her, thinking of all the nights she'd left me alone to go see him, all the lies she told, the hot hush in her voice as she whispered Mike in our own bed. Then I murmured, "I'm not sure if I want to. I'm not sure I can. Sometimes the damage is permanent." She inhaled, tears forming again. "I understand." I gave a small shrug. "But I also know our son would be devastated by a divorce. Maybe we need more time. Maybe we let things settle, see if the wound even has a chance to close." She nodded slowly, like a prisoner receiving a temporary reprieve. "I'll wait," she whispered. "As long as you need." My lips thinned. "Fine. But you have to understand, what you killed might never return." She crumpled slightly, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I know." And that was that. We reached a silent agreement to remain in some limbo state of half marriage, half estrangement. Months rolled by. The story of Mike all but vanished from her daily life. No one at her workplace asked about him. He was never a public figure in her circle. She quietly withdrew from certain social events, presumably to avoid any awkward run-ins or questions. If he ever tried to contact her again, I never heard about it. I still keep in touch with Jim, though we haven't mentioned the matter again. He did his job. I paid him for his silence, and that was the end of it. Now, on the rare nights when Sarah and I share a meal, the conversation is stilted, polite, lacking warmth. She always looks haunted, as if expecting me to explode or degrade her at any moment. But I don't. I remain the steady man, the unruffled presence, because that, I've learned, is far more punishing than any curse word or slap could ever be. She doesn't know how to handle a husband who's so dispassionately certain of his moral high ground. I do think sometimes about the future. Will I always be this detached? Perhaps. Revenge wasn't about punishing her physically. It was about freeing myself from the illusions she tried to keep me trapped in. I used to believe in the sanctity of marriage, that a deep vow could outlast any challenge. But now I see that once trust is shattered, The marriage is only an empty shell, and I've become content to live in that shell, at least for the moment, because I no longer carry illusions. That, ironically, is my sense of peace. When I watch her from across the room, pale, anxious, wearing guilt like a second skin, I recognize that she's paying every day for her choices. She flinches at shadows, as if expecting me to produce new evidence of her betrayal and throw it in her face. I never do. I simply let her exist in her torment, while I exist in my calm. Some part of me wonders if, one day, she'll gather her courage and leave, unable to bear my silent condemnation. Another part of me wonders if I care. The truth is, I'm not sure I would. That's what happens, I suppose, when a man chooses to cut the gangrenous limb from his life. There's relief once it's gone. The phantom pains are there, but in time, even they fade. Love? Perhaps it's gone forever. But so is the burden of pretense. Tonight, as I sit here at the window, cigarette in hand, I see her standing in the hallway, eyes glassy, shoulders sagging. She's watching me from a distance. I flick my gaze in her direction, and she shrinks back slightly. Then she steps forward, as if summoning courage, and clears her throat. "I'm going to bed," she says softly. I nod. "All right." She lingers a moment, waiting for something. Approval, rejection, a sign of warmth. She won't get it, so eventually she nods and disappears into the dark corridor. I exhale a ribbon of smoke, letting my gaze settle on my own reflection in the glass. There's a man there, wearing the faintest hint of a smirk. He's calm, in control, no fury left. Because that's the choice I made, to operate like a surgeon, quietly removing the rotten pieces, leaving behind only what must remain. It's strange how satisfying emptiness can feel when you've spent so long drowning in someone else's betrayal. I extinguish the cigarette. Outside, the night is silent, holding no promise of dawn. At least not yet. Yes, I'm a man. And I hold on. The lies are gone. The illusion's gutted. She doesn't know how to heal. And maybe she never will. But me. I'm alive, unshackled from the naive devotion that once blinded me. Mistrust suits me better than fake innocence, and that, I suspect, is the final mercy I offer her, letting her see what she's done, every waking moment, until she can't bear her own reflection. No more yelling, no more accusations, just the unstoppable weight of silent consequences. Sometimes that's what real revenge looks like. It isn't a dramatic climax or a violent storm. It's the slow, methodical unraveling of everything she built with deception, replaced by a silence she can never fill. And I'm finally free.